Sa February usually we are experiencing the start of drought na.
The usual practice of the farmers in planting at least early part of October to November is delayed. So their production is being affected because of the coming in of the drought.
Dati kat mga October agrugidan nga transplant ngam tatakat mabalimpay no January sa January nga talaga January February kasjay
ta DJ nga na typhoon ti August minulaan mi ti carrots mutlaeng jay tirakuta tapos after manen 1 month na typhoon so nga maikatalo daytoy nga mula mi.
Well, climate change, which is actually characterized by increase in temperature and also changes in precipitation patterns and distributions, actually affects crop production.
Manifestations of climate change are now being felt and observed by many, especially by upland farmers whose agricultural production is vulnerable to the extremely unpredictable weather conditions. In the case of the Cordillera region, which is considered the watershed cradle of northern Luzon, these frequent and intense occurrences have caused natural disasters that affected its farmers, including those in the nearby lowland provinces. These impacts can significantly affect human security and ecological sustainability. The Cordillera is home to a significant portion of the Philippines' remaining forests and biodiversity, and the headwater of 9 major river systems that provide irrigation to the rice-producing provinces of Luzon Island. In addition, farmers in this region are mostly indigenous peoples whose livelihoods are dependent on the natural resources. Although a sustainable relationship with these resources was maintained for hundreds of years through their indigenous knowledge systems and practices, this has been slowly altered due to population growth and modernization. In the last 50 years, there have been drastic changes in terms of land use, and commercial agriculture has been widely practiced. Existing challenges relating to these shifts can be aggravated by the impacts that climate change may bring.
The way I look at climate change is, of course, it's a scenario nga it comes to us, but what makes things worse is there are a lot of agricultural practices that are not sound. What happens is kagaya ng the introduction of fertilizers and pesticides. One governing thought among farmers is that the more the better, the more the stronger. Now, if we are going to connect these things to climate change, we understand from the description of what can happen, what can possibly happen, or what is already happening in regard to climate change is that this problem will become aggravated.
The MDGF project on strengthening Philippine institutional capacity to adapt to climate change actually aims to reduce the vulnerability of the agricultural sector and its stakeholders by building the capacity to adapt and to make them climate resilient. This is done by the capacity building is usually done by training and also by pilot testing or demonstration of potential climate change adaptation options with potential for possible upscaling in other areas and communities.
So in this project we talk mainly about adaptation to climate change, but of course there's also a lot of debate about mitigation. So this means the emission of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, so which is actually what is contributing to climate change. So there's always a debate, so is this relevant for the Philippines, since if we compare the emissions per capita per human in the Philippines, it's so much less than to many developed countries. So in that sense, adaptation is really the priority for the Philippines. But I would like to argue that we cannot forget about mitigation. Also, of course, for this project, the major entry point is adaptation, just because the Philippines is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change in the world.
The particular component of the project, dubbed as Outcome 3.1, is actually focused on the fragile ecosystem of the Cordilleras. And Benguet and Ifugao were chosen as representative provinces to focus on vegetable-based crop production system, and that is for Benguet, and Ifugao for the rice-based crop production system.
We are implementing our project in 8 barangays located in 8 municipalities. 4 of them are in Benguet and 4 of them are in Ifugao. The selection of the pilot sites were based on the elevation of the barangays. So we have 3 barangays which are in the high elevation. We have also 2 barangays medium elevation and 3 barangays at low elevation. We are implementing climate change adaptation options or CCA options, of which we have forest enrichment, we have crop production, we have livestock production, soil and water management, and we also have alternative livelihood options.
Climate change adaptation options are agricultural practices that we will promote in specific locations as a way of increasing climate resilience. And these are determined or selected from good practices.
So in this project we talk a lot about good practices, good agricultural practices. So what do we mean by this? A good agricultural practice is an agricultural practice that is sustainable. So this means sustainable means it works for now and for the future. So now in this project we have another little take on this, because we look at good agricultural practices for climate change adaptation. So this means we do not only look for good practices which are sustainable, we look for those that can also help the farmers to adapt to climate change. We collect some practices which we think are good, and we screen them how they can help us to adapt to climate change, meaning how can they help us to be better prepared for droughts, for floods, for climate-related hazards, for changes in the temperature and rainfall patterns, maybe new pests and diseases that arise, all these phenomena which we have with climate change.
So we have to evaluate them in terms of a number of criteria before we actually promote in other parts of the country.
So we try to look at technological suitability, that is to answer the question, are we introducing CCA options that are already technologically suitable to the biophysical characteristic of the area? And the other one is, if they are technologically suitable to the biophysical characteristic of the area, then they should be environmentally and economically efficient. And if they are, then it should be connected to the acceptability to the whole community.
So for the monitoring and evaluation, we use this spider diagram. But the spider diagram is not only just expert judgment. It's also underpinned by a lot of information that has been collected in the project. First, some calculations of the economic benefits. So really calculating, is it economically efficient for the farmers to adopt these practices? So this, for example, informs the score for the economic feasibility. Then we have this indicator combined with the social aspects. So that one, a lot of the farmers' feedback we regularly obtain from them flows into this indicator. So at the same time, on the environmental side, we cannot say anything about these practices just by studying one season. So we actually studied those practices over several seasons, and even then it's just preliminary results. But that is why the project also produces guidance and a manual so that Department of Agriculture can continue with this monitoring and evaluation.